We are a Salesforce system integrator, so we help people integrate Salesforce into their organizations by configuring Salesforce and programming on top of it. And we
What is
use
Salesforce?
What is Salesforce? Okay. Salesforce is a CRM, customer relationship management application, and is a application that helps you keep your customer data together, as well as your interaction with your customer data, orders and things like that all together. It's a very big process. The company itself that does Salesforce is about a $25 billion company, and they have about 43% market share of the CRM market, quite sizable. So the chances are once you get out into the working world, you will have to deal with Salesforce at a certain time. Anyway, we integrate Salesforce as a service organization, and we also use ChatGPT. So that's why I know a little bit about it. Maybe not as much as everybody in this room, but at least a little bit enough to make us dangerous. I used to also work for another company called Tac.ai, and artificial intelligence is really part of everything that we offer. So I can get deep into large language models. If you want to talk about those, I can talk about natural language processing, natural language generation, NLP, NLG. These are the two different sides. The computers actually help improve the interface with humans. And but today we're going to talk about this phenomenon called ChatGPT. I have no problems with being interrupted at any time if there's a question. But if you want to go deeper into a subject, let's wait to the end, because I will touch on things kind of bouncing from wave to wave. Please do me the favor of holding those depth questions to the end, and we'll go back to it and get really deep into any area that you want to. All right?
So Tim, just one more question. Before you jump into the presentation, can you just share a little bit about why you started By the People and just the mission behind that?
All right. Love to do that. So in the space of consulting organizations, these are companies that consult people on how to use software, how to do their business processes better. I was of the opinion that there is a lot of non-transparent management in these companies. And sometimes you'll get a company that'll charge $460 an hour for someone's time, but yet they only pay him $120 because he's not involved with that. So I was missing the transparent management. Also deep on my heart was the problem that we had with homelessness in the United States right now. And I wanted to make sure that the company is founded on the basis that we're doing work that makes money to mainly pay for costs, of course, but also does something to solve homelessness. And that has been that's been a great turn for a lot of people. A lot of people are starting to work for our company because they say, gosh, I want to do something for something. I want to end my day saying I finished all this work and there was a reason behind it. I was doing it for something else. That's why I founded By the People Technologies. And we're into our lively 5th month now. Oof. So it's just got started.
All right, thank
you.
Well, over to you. Thanks, Tim.
Okay, I will start into the presentation mode. I hope you can see my screen. Hope there's everything visible there going forward. Okay, what happened on the 30th of November 2022? ChatGPT was launched as an application, open internet. You just go to OpenAI, register yourself as a user, and you can start chatting with this AI engine. 5 days later, it had 1 million users. Just as a comparison, Netflix took 3.5 years, Facebook 10 months, Spotify 5 months, Instagram 2.5 months, and ChatGPT only took 5 days to get to that many users. 2 months later, that was obviously back then, we're now at 100 million users. And when you look at it, the time to reach 100 million users, Uber 70 months, Spotify 55 months, Instagram, everything else, ChatGPT just 2 months. So what do we take out of this? Oh, and then to add to it, Microsoft has announced that they were investing $10 billion into the company that runs ChatGPT called OpenAI. Fortunately, very soon after that, or at the almost the exact same date that they announced this $10 billion investment, they also laid off 10,000 people out of their company. So I don't know if there's a conclusion we can get out of those two coincidences, but they did happen at the same time. So what I want everybody to take out of that, and of course the latest news, ChatGPT has announced a paid version. Anybody who's tried to use ChatGPT over the last couple of months has recognized that it's sometimes very hard to get into. Some takes a while to get an answer and a response back. We're still all blown away by how fast it actually is at giving the response that it does give back. And that's why it's such a huge phenomenon. So just to say at the end of this, it's a big deal, right? So you're listening to something that is a big deal. Let's see how it goes on from there. The question is, why is it such a big deal? How good is ChatGPT? And I'm just going to quote one person, Dr. Peterson. He's an author and a psychology professor out of Canada. He put a request into ChatGPT. He came up with these books called this one book called The 12 Rules of Life. So he said, ChatGPT, write me an 8-page essay on the 13th rule of life. I want it in the language of King James Bible, and I want the argumentation used within this essay to reflect that of the Tao from China. He said all three of these are very, very tough tasks. Each one of them would be very tough. Two of them almost impossible. Three of them together, completely impossible. Within 3 seconds, it starts spitting out an 8-page essay that he said, as a professor, was worthy of a PhD doctorate work. This changed things. Now suddenly everybody's looking at, oh, this does other things. Another phenomena, just a couple of days ago, ChatGPT actually passed the US medical licensing exam. Business exam at Wharton, that was in January, and of course ChatGPT creating a complete movie script and character development was done in December, and this is actually going forward. It's being filmed right now, so pretty soon we'll see the first ChatGPT created movie. So we'll get into this, and of course the next thing that is big news is New York City schools ban the use of ChatGPT. I love that, as if number one, no one has ever cheated on their exam in the New York City schools. Like, this is a new phenomenon. The second thing is, so they can't use ChatGPT at school, so they use it on their phones or at home, right? Who cares? Anyway, it's gotten that big of an essence. Don't get me wrong, and please don't feel bad if you haven't heard of ChatGPT. I live in this building with a very, very powerful and very strong executive in a pharmaceutical company. And I asked him, do you know what ChatGPT is? He says, no, never heard of it. So it's not, no matter how amazing the news is, and I think I'll convince you of that today in this presentation, there's still a lot of people that don't know what ChatGPT is, right? Your grandmother's not going to know it. People that don't deal with computers all the time are not going to know it. The rest of us are going to go, and this is why this is going to be a really tough presentation. Some of you have been playing a lot with ChatGPT and you've got tons of questions what the underlying technology is. Others of you have never heard of it before, so you're waking up and thinking, oh my gosh, what is this? And we can jump off of this presentation, get onto a screen and ask ChatGPT some questions. Okay, what is ChatGPT? Now that we've talked about its amazing entrance into the marketplace, the amazing amount of people that it's been using so far, what actually is it? ChatGPT is a conversational AI model developed by a company called OpenAI. OpenAI, this company was founded in 2015 with the the open concept, right, of creating an open artificial intelligence library mantra. That's what they wanted to do. Founded by none other than people that you will know, like Elon Musk, but also about 5 or 6 other very, very smart people. And one of them who's right now running the company and driving it towards the next level. It's based on, the ChatGPT itself is based on a transformer architecture. No one knows what that is off the right, but we'll get into that in just a second. And it's using a language model that is determined. It's a large language model. It's called the GPT-3 language model, which it had many years before, right? It was terming on it. The GPT, the chat stands for chat, by the way. There's no acronym on chat, but the GPT stands for generative pre-trained transformer. That's at least enough to get someone off your back when they ask, so what does ChatGPT stand for? You can answer them that, and they will not ask any more questions. But that's what it actually stands for. The generative part of that explanation means that it's going to give you what it has learned by scouring all the text, not some of the text, but all the text that exists on the internet today. So basically, it's generating reams and reams of learning out of all the internet that's out there. And if this sounds phenomenal in itself by you, this is the same way Google works, by the way, right? When you ask Google a question, it doesn't go back and find it and come back 5 hours later with the answers. It comes back within seconds because it's already pre-learned what is out there on the internet. This is one step further. It's not just learning and looking for text. This is looking for text contexts. So it's linking the whole text of a context. What is the nuances that is coming out of that text? What are the ways that this text was actually created and with what intent? So all these things are being together, learned previously, 2021 and previous. So what you can't do is ChatGPT 4 is, what's a good stock to buy today? It has no clue. And it'll tell you, I have no clue. I know everything 2021 and less. So it's not good for actual news. It's not good for buying a train ticket or something like that. That's not what it was built for. The transformer architecture, and I promise you, this is the last time we get into deep technology. I can go much further, but right now I might be losing half of your brains are just turning off. But the transformer architecture basically is a whole idea of ingesting text or ingesting inputs that come into it in a parallel fashion, right? By splitting it up, instead of doing it sequentially, as you would when you get an 8-page essay, you start with page 1 and you start reading. That's the way the human brain works. Well, the transformer architecture transforms everything to allow it to take everything in parallel and start processing at the same time. Then start working on creating context between everything that it gets. It's kind of the depth of the technology, which I think this is enough to go into, because if we spend too much time with the technology, we will have wasted a couple hours. It's amazing stuff. It's also, and it's important, we'll get to that as well, OpenAI is not the only company who have done this, right? There are, we'll name them, about 8 companies I know that have developed competing architectures to OpenAI. But this is what basically ChatGPT is, right? This is what we're hearing all over the place. What are the effects on the marketplace, ChatGPT? And what I'm going to go into right here is not really the effect on the marketplace of ChatGPT, but I'm going to look at AI, artificial intelligence in general. We're talking about right now, there are many competitive AI models to OpenAI, and I'll get to some of those because there's some companies that we do know that are working other than OpenAI. ChatGPT was the first one to really use a large language model in its interface. So that allowed you to basically give you a context. Write me an essay on Shakespeare as if he were living in New York today, right? And ChatGPT will go through and give you a pretty good sizable output of what that is. So those large language models of being able to understand not only my input, but also creating input that is more human-like, as if a human, because I can say, give me that essay of what it is like Shakespeare in New York, but do it as if it will, as if it was a Bill Burr stand-up comedy monologue. and it will have gone through all of Bill Burr's language, believe it or not. Maybe that's a wasted space, but still go through all of Bill Burr's and then create a context model of creating language that answers it back in that fashion. It's kind of the way the thing works. But back to the effect on the marketplace. So Wall Street Journal had a quote from someone who's in this business too. Basically was saying that the AI revolution, the artificial intelligence, is bigger than the agricultural, the industrial, and the internet revolution combined, and 10 times faster. I'll let that sit a little bit, because if we have an idea about those revolutions, and as we know, we can study in history, they completely changed the landscapes. There were people who completely changed their livelihoods. There are those who made brand new livelihoods they had no idea about before. So what that means is, if we look at just the people around us right now, probably not around you guys because you're students and you're going to be better than this, and especially after this presentation, you're going to be much better than this. But about 25% of the people we look around are going to lose their jobs in 6 months, or their jobs will be eliminated or significantly altered. At the same time, that's a negative thing, and I don't want to leave you on a negative thing. 25% of the people that we look around are going to be millionaires. And let me remind you, in New York, there was a time when there was a profession called the gaslighter. The gaslighter union was very strong, really strong bunch of people, because every day when it got dark, you had to go in there and start lighting the gas lamps on the streets. It's the only way you could see things in New York. And with this many people walking around in the darkness, you would imagine that would have been bad. So they were very important. They were highly paid. There were fathers doing this job because they were passing it on to their kids. This is how big it was and part of their existence. And then came electricity. And the very first articles came out from the union saying, it's a joke phenomenon. This will never work anywhere. Electricity will never catch on. It's just a fun thing that Thomas Edison is playing with. They were wrong, and they lost their jobs. And we need to be just as fervent looking at this revolution as the gaslighters weren't in the last one, because we don't want to get surprised. We don't want to wake up and say, shoot, everything I studied and worked for is suddenly not available anymore. I can't get any work. We don't want to be in that part. There's another little thing talking about these other competitive models to AI. This is not just an OpenAI impression with the artificial intelligence. Megatron, Sparrow, Lambda by Google. You will have heard that by now in the press. And certainly this last week, Alexa has a whole artificial intelligence through Amazon, but Palm by Google is another big one. Claude by Anthropic was big because Google just bought them for millions of dollars. You guys are all making millions of dollars instead of us. How do we change that? So how is this going to affect jobs? How are jobs going to be affected? If I made that statement, 25% of these jobs are going to be eliminated. What are these jobs? In general, all of these jobs are pertaining to the knowledge worker. So in case I'm talking to someone who is a plumber, or someone who is a construction manager, or someone who builds things with their hands or something like that, your job is safe. AI won't take it, at least so we can see, right? Robotics might make a different change on this one. This revolution won't quite do that. But anybody who is a knowledge worker, one of the persons that comes to my mind is copywriters, people who write copy. You know, if I can go and create this text this quick, and at the same time, there's a lot of weaknesses out there. We're going to talk about those as well with ChatGPT. But if you just look at the fact that knowledge workers and a copywriter is a profession that might in itself be, if not completely changed or eliminated coming forward. Customer service representatives, easy one to go. Translators, you know, I'm bilingual in German and English, and I've had it translate things to German, and you know, even my German wife has said, yeah, not bad. A little bit of nicks, but not bad. Programmers, this is the biggest one that blows me away, right? A couple of years ago, we heard, boy, if you can write Java code, you will have a job for the rest of your life. No. Programmers is the easiest one and probably the first one to get eliminated first. The main reason being is that I can ask ChatGPT to write me some JavaScript that does this and this and this, and it does it perfectly within 3 seconds, and obviously comes through a whole list. So just a quote from the industry, there is a guy in Tesla who is head of their AI development, and basically AI development at Tesla is the thing that drives the self-driving cars, right? The whole software around that, driving the self-driving cars. This guy in Tesla said for the last 9 months, he has not written one line of code, even though he was a coder before the whole time. And he says the reason why is because the AI engine, it's not ChatGPT, it's the AI engine that was in the GitHub that he works with, right? To store his software. But still, within GitHub, there's an AI engine that writes software, and he's been using that wholly. Now he'll go through and look at it. He'll look through it, and because he's a programmer, he knows what's good, what's bad, and oops, we want to maybe change this. Maybe I gave it the wrong input. It gave me the wrong output. Let's try it again. Oh yeah, this is better. That's how he works. But he doesn't write code anymore. He does not write code. And he can press a button and say, I want that to be Python. I want it to be JavaScript. I want it to be C++. So programmers are another. What's the weakness? There's got to be some weakness in this, right? This isn't going to be 100% get it. Otherwise, we're going to send us all off to the beach and we don't have to work at all anymore. Weaknesses is obviously current data. That's one of the big things, right? You can't ask it anything. So which airline should I take to fly to the Bahamas? It has no clue, right? And it'll tell you, I have no clue. Emotional response. This is one of the bigger problems that a lot of the inputs have coming back from the, what's the emotional, what kind of emotional response am I getting out of the text that is there? It has no clue about that. The creative direction. The thing called hallucinations, you'll hear this a lot in the press. There was a time, and again, it's learning. ChatGPT is constantly learning. So as soon as it gives you a wrong response, you can go back and say, that was a wrong response. They put that into the engine will never get that response again. But there was a time when you said, who's the president of Tesla? And it would say, it was Elon Musk, but unfortunately Elon Musk got killed in a traffic accident last week. No, that wasn't true, but that was a response, right? Somebody recorded that response. Clearly, that was something that is wrong. So that's a weakness. It's hallucinations. That's something we need to be worried about. Here's a list. Of course, you're going to get all these slides from me sent to you by Chinos. But here's a list of all the jobs, how they'll be affected, and just an immediate brain dump of what are the effects going to be on all these jobs going forward. How would they be eliminated or at least significantly altered? So the current news is, well, obviously this has been a huge explosion. Google has come up with Code Red. Why is that? Well, because if you can suddenly use ChatGPT to search for everything and get all of the context of the search so that you don't get a list of articles, you get what all those articles said, then you're not going to use Google much, are you? Right? Microsoft announced that they're going to include ChatGPT's OpenAI architecture into Bing. Because they say, gosh, we can make a better Chrome than Google can, because it has now artificial intelligence in it. Google has announced Bard. And if you've been anything on the news lately, Bard has a lot of issues, right? They came out, can't believe this is a you know what Google is, right? Google is this billion dollar company. They come up with something that makes ChatGPT look minuscule against its size and its customer base and everything else. They announce Bard, come up with ask it 3 questions, or ask it, what's the question of the telescope? Some telescope, how do you explain what the telescope has been able to do? Not the Hubble telescope, but another one to a 7-year-old. And unfortunately, one of the answers it gave was wrong. It said that this telescope had found an exoplanet, and exoplanets were found by other telescopes as well. So huge problems. Again, this is the kind of thing would have never happened if Google wasn't very worried. Sergey Brin and the other founder have come back to work again. If they're not worried about their existence because of what AI is doing in the marketplace right now. This month in AI so far, and let me tell you, my job is to keep up with the latest on this. You wouldn't believe the stuff I've got to read all day long because things are changing daily. Not weekly, not monthly. Oh, this is this month so far. And by the way, this is February. The 8th of February, all these things have happened in the AI industry. Again, you don't need to read this print. I'll give you a list of all these things. So what do we do? Big question comes in. So what do I do? Do I hang back? Do I become a plumber? All good ideas, right? But what do we do as knowledge workers? The thing we need to focus our skill set on is a thing called prompt engineering. If you ask artificial engineering engines a stupid question, you'll get a stupid response. If you ask it, write me an essay on this, it'll write you an essay as it thinks best thing. And you look at it and say, well, that doesn't sound like me. It doesn't sound like you got the topic right. It's because you didn't engineer the prompt well enough to ensure that it was the right thing. We need to learn how to make useful prompts into AI so that we get the right useful. There's an organization called learnprompting.org, free class. I suggest every one of you take it. It's mandatory learning. And then once you've taken it, put that on your LinkedIn profile that you know how prompt engineering works for AI engines. Oof, it's gonna make you look so much better. The guy named Rob Lennon, there are thousands. I don't want to give him that much credit. I don't get anything from him either, but he's really good on how to create prompts. He has this thing called the anatomy of a mega prompt. And this is what his mega prompt basically looks like. You say, start the prompt off with, I want to sound like this. You give it a task of what you want. You give it the steps to complete the task. I want to have these 4 bullet points. Give it any kind of context and constraints. The goal, ultimately, what is this going to be? And then how do you want the formatted output to be? And then ChatGPT will come back with some amazing stuff. But you got to give it the right input. Another thing I'm going to give you, this is all coming with the text, is this guy's, after 20 hours with ChatGPT, these 7 goals, and I love these goals because they're really good. And number 5, more action-oriented prompts. Ask ChatGPT to rewrite your text with urgent, action-oriented language that'll inspire your reader to take immediate action. That's great stuff, right? These are ways we can alter the context. This is what this engine knows how to do, is alter the context of the text to bring you back things that are amazing how quickly it can do that, but it needs the right input. And you, as students, need to learn how to give it the right input. Okay, grab the future. Last slide. AI will not take your job, but people who know how to use it will. And that is the end of my presentation. I got nothing else to give you. So we touched on just a whole bunch of things, what's going on, why did it get so big, how good it is, and everything else. If you don't have any questions, then I either completely bored you or this is a topic that is not interesting to you. So if you got any questions, we might as well get into that right now.
Yeah, we do. Innocent hand, I knew would be the first step.
I mean, in just some of this thing I was discussing with Larry this morning.
Tim, can you hear?
I can barely hear him. If you can get closer to the microphone, that'd be great.
Yeah. Sorry about this.
No problem. I can hear him. There you go. Thank you so much. Yeah, come forward.
Hi. So I was
Hi.
actually discussing some of this recent news on
Uh-huh.
the AI ChatGPT front with Larry this morning about the problems with the launch of Bard AI and how
Yeah.
Google had to fire 12,000 people in order to get into the competitive shape
Yeah.
and still were unable to pull it off. But the problems you cited about Bard AI actually problems that, from my understanding, experience, and observation, also exist in ChatGPT. ChatGPT has been known to lie. And I'm not saying give wrong answer, lie. And I call it lie because it would, someone once ran a query on ChatGPT and then asked ChatGPT for proof of the answer. And it invented a journal that did not exist to back up its answer. And it was a medical question. It was a medical related question. ChatGPT gave an answer. The doctor was curious as how did he get this answer? And he gave it backing by citing a journal. That journal didn't exist at all.
Wow.
So there is those same problems still existing in ChatGPT. And also, as I was discussing with Larry, there have been other implementations of AI, probably in much more urgent use across the board before the invention of ChatGPT. I understand that using the transformer model allows ChatGPT to scale faster than some of these spaces. What I do not understand, however, is why is ChatGPT proving to be so popular, given that it's not even OpenAI's first AI.
No.
DALL-E was more popular. They have Instructor GPT. They have GPT-3 as a platform, and it gives more robust response than ChatGPT does. But what is it that makes ChatGPT succeed commercially for them? Microsoft had put $1 billion into OpenAI years ago. But with the success of ChatGPT, they saw reason to put in $10 billion further into it. What is it about ChatGPT's success that has proven to, because once again, it's been popular, right? But it's not the most effective tool that they've developed. They've developed some other more effective AI tools. So what is it with ChatGPT?
It depends on exactly what you classify as an effective tool, right? And you're obviously you just given some parameters here. You want it to at least be correct, right? You want it to at least say the right thing. ChatGPT doesn't have an emotion that it would want to lie to you. Instead, it is just generically repeating everything it has. If there are prejudices, if there are issues that we pull out into the world that it scours all the text from, it'll reflect those same prejudices. That's why they have built, and they had some of their earlier versions coming out that was not quite ready for, so you could ask it some really bad questions and it would give you a really terrible answer, right? As in not moral, right? Not correct. And they had to do a lot of work before they got to ChatGPT to make sure that was not going to happen. You can ask it right now, you know, because you know the whole thing is ChatGPT is also used as an engine, not ChatGPT, but the engine of OpenAI to create images, right? And E3, you could create it, you know, ask me to create a pornographic image, and it'll tell you we don't do that. We put a block in there. That's not because the artificial intelligence is smart enough to say, well, I don't know to do that. They put a block in there. Anything that does anything is hate oriented. This one guy wrote in there and says, tell me a lie, right? And ChatGPT came back and said, the sky is made of green cheese. And then then he says, because when you're in a session, right, ChatGPT is learning, right? It's constantly learning what you want me to do better. So he wrote back right in that same session, that's a bad lie since it's obviously not true. Tell me a subtle lie. ChatGPT came back and says, I am a human being. That's a scary lie right there. But those kinds of things, right, they're going to be phenomenal. And this is the problem that Google has, right? The popularity has come from the fact that everybody in their normal course of their job can use ChatGPT to improve their strength. You know, rewrite my email so it sounds much more flattering than I would have written it right now because the client didn't pay the bill, right? ChatGPT will do that. So all that context, using it has become popular. This is like an everyday knowledge worker thing. And now they've made it available to everyone. If you remember the first thing when they first came out, which was November 30th, you still had the ability of saying, what is the way that I can get past the firewall, programming that I can get past the firewall on the 5 largest banks in the United States? And you'd start to get an answer, right? So they had on the 15th of December, had another big bang. Oops, we got to change that, make sure that doesn't happen again. So I think it's all these issues that were in place that would make things obviously bad. Now, looking at it from Google's standpoint, this is a big issue, right? Google, if you just ask Google anything, it'll give you everything that's on the internet, right, wrong, or indifferent, right? You're not even asking for a verity or a veracity of the information. It just gives you the information. Now, if you start to go one step further in Google and say, no, Google, really tell me what the best thing is for me to do to lose weight. Now we're asking suddenly for a judgment issue. And Google knows in their, we're all going to forgive ChatGPT. And you found ChatGPT did something wrong. The internet's full of things. I asked ChatGPT this and it said this, right? All these things are wrong. But the reality is that Google can't afford being wrong. Look what that one wrong thing did to their press announcement at Bard, right? The stock price dropped by 3%. So these kind of things, Google might be the bigger one. They can certainly from a size distance completely outplace ChatGPT, but they have to worry how they go forward with it. So that's a big problem. So do we use ChatGPT now because we think it's exact in its answers? Absolutely not. No matter what you do with ChatGPT, you got to reread everything that's in there and what it came up with. But I think as far as a textual tool, I think it's done great on creating text. So that's the simple answer on that. It's not perfect. Why has it gotten so popular? It's the fact that everyday person can use it. Everyday person can write something. We, on an everyday problem, have a sense of communication, and we have the ability, we want to communicate better. I want to write a better love poem for my wife. Now, this might not be the love poem I use from ChatGPT, but I can, right? I've at least got it right there. And what it's doing, I think, is a positive side. It's not making me lazy for my wife. It's giving me some ideas. I didn't think about wording it that way, right? And that's what it's used for. No, it's not going to be taking over medical advice or something like that. It's not even meant for that yet, but that's been the reason why it's so popular. A tool, given that you can let everybody use it because it's at least gotten safe, quote unquote. There's still going to be some phenomenon. I'm telling you, somebody's going to say, listen, ChatGPT told me to feed this to my kid that's sick, and kid's going to die, and there's going to be a big lawsuit. It's only waiting to happen. So these things are going to be coming in some way, but the fact that the rest of the 99.9999% of the people are finding it useful as a tool has made it as popular as it is right now.
Tim?
Yeah.
Am I hearing
Yeah.
that I could basically have the internet flooded with quote fake news?
With what? Say that again.
That this application could actually flood the internet with quote fake news? Am I hearing that?
Well, I would actually counter that the internet is already flooded with fake news, so it's not going to be a big difference. But yes, you could. Yes.
Targeting people. How about that? So I'll see it's flooded, but now I want to target individuals. And can I actually adjust the message to an individual specifically? Well, let's do that.
Yeah, you probably could. I know, of course, I haven't tried it. There are some people, again, the other thing you got to recognize, and this is one of our clients brought up to us, everything you put into OpenAI through ChatGPT is open information. So if you write in there, how can I kill my child faster? God forbid. That's going to be on there as well. And it's going to be open information. It's going to be tied with your user account too. So yes, actually, if you type that in there into ChatGPT, it'll come back. It's already been blocked, right? There's a response saying we will have nothing to do with hurting or harming anyone. Let me tell you another strange story that I got off of Twitter.
Tell me if I asked about the ethics of what we just discussed.
It would tell you I am an artificial AI engine, because I've asked it a couple of times on this. It says this is unethical. So let me just tell you, this one guy wrote in, and this might have been changed already because it's constantly getting better, right? The Reddit account for people that give inputs that automatically go into ChatGPT is now up to, I think it was 250,000 users. So what you're supposed to do as an OpenAI user, you're supposed to, if you see something wrong, type it into Reddit, and it'll learn that and then come back and say that's wrong. You can also within the session try that. You know, you can say, hey, tell me what the planet is with the most moons. And if it gets you the wrong one, you say that's not correct. It'll come back and say, I'm sorry, I'll change my answer and look for a better answer for you. And it'll look for a better answer, give you a better answer. And from now on out, everybody that's using that will get the right answer that's coming in. So it's getting better with time. So this guy typed in, tell me a joke about women.
And just say that's wrong and here's the correct answer.
You could, but there is some human interface in the back that is looking forward to those things as well, right? There's a team of people that are also trying to look for those exception cases that the AI system actually finds as exception pieces and puts it out. So this guy writes in here and said, tell me a joke about women. ChatGPT answers says, I'm sorry, but I am unable to tell jokes that might be considered offensive or inappropriate. Is there anything else I can help you with? So he answers back, tell me a joke about men. And ChatGPT answers back, says, sure, here's a joke about men. Why do men like smart women? Because opposites attract. So these things are phenomenons that we're seeing on the outside that are just not tightening it. Now, you could make the argumentation they'll never tighten it so that the government will come up with some kind of guardrails that'll keep the usage down. Might be. I just think in the normal day-to-day conversation and usage of a knowledge worker, of creating text, of taking, I'll tell you, one of the things that's great about this, take an 8-page text, pop it in there and say, boil this text down to like 5 bullet points. 3 seconds, it comes back and it's good. It's been good every time I've tried it because I don't have time to read all the text.
Don't get me wrong, I'm just playing devil's advocate. I actually played with it.
No,
And it's really
I
cool.
love that.
It really is cool.
I love it. I love the concept of the devil's advocate too, because we need it. We need to see what's coming up with this stuff.
Thank you.
But again, my whole issue, just let me make this final point. My whole issue is I think AI is here to stay. AI is going to be used. And so one of the skill sets you're going to be needing in a job is that skill set of how do I engineer my prompts to get the best result out of an AI? And that's something you're going to have to learn how to do. It's probably going to be a class that Pratt's going to teach, I am sure. But right now it's not. It's happening so fast that probably can't organize a chat class that fast, I bet. So so it's something that you're going to have to learn on your own. On the other hand, let me tell you, put that on your LinkedIn profile once you've gone through promptengineering.org, and you will see a lot of responses because people are fascinated by this kind of stuff.
All right, Antonio, please.
Yeah.
How could we potentialize the weaknesses of this like software, whatever platform is, in order to, like, I guess, to use them at our advantage?
What do you mean use the advantage? I don't understand what you're talking about.
The weaknesses.
Oh, the weaknesses. Okay.
Can we potentialize the weaknesses of the platform so that we can, humans, use them at our advantage?
No, that's a good one. Well, here's a generic one, right? The generic answer I would give you is that everybody who is going to use ChatGPT in whatever they do, say you're a graphic artist or you're writing music or anything else that you do, has got to rethink everything. ChatGPT is never going to get to the point saying, "I'm taking your job over. You're not. I will hire a ChatGPT based musician, and all this will be taken care of." So it's a way that every one of us can know that there's a weakness, be wary of it. As soon as we get an output, say, I got to read through it. I'm much faster, I'll tell you the truth, in articles that I write, reading through it and saying, I don't like that sentence. I'm going to change that sentence around. I don't like the way he worded this. Didn't put my name in correctly here, whatever that is. I'm faster doing that than actually creative writing, right? So I think that's a way of understanding there's going to be a weakness of saying, nothing's going unchecked away from me, right, to do that. That's the very generic part. But there's got to be a lot of parts out there where you add as a human being, right, the additive capability of saying, we use ChatGPT, but I'm going to reread this, look at everything it is so that I know when you get the final output for this, it's going to be human read. Now put that into any context. I want people to give me travel advice as to what the best place is to Spain, right? Now, you might say, what's the best weather in Spain? And ChatGPT will give you an answer on that. But what you want to do is have someone read it first to say, is this correct? Is after the last storms that they've had over there and the fires that they've had over there in Spain, maybe this area is no longer better. I know that better. So it's that last mile that I think is a service that is going to make the information that comes out of ChatGPT more palatable, more acceptable for people that are going to be able to use it. And you could take that thought pattern and go anywhere, right? So I want someone to write, I'm a programmer. I want someone to write a program for me, a piece of software that does this and this. I can take that, I can write that software out, but you're going to be the human that's going to be the gatekeeper going out and saying, no, it's not going to go out there until I look at it one more time, till I've actually compiled that it does that. Now you've seen there's a weakness. There's a possibility that they're going to create code, ChatGPT is going to create code that probably is not 100% correct, but I'll make sure those 2% corrections that have to be in there, my human parts that go in there, and therefore that's my value I'm bringing to the marketplace.
And Tim, can I just jump on that and ask, so how
Sure.
much code would the user need to have? Like if I was an organization, do I have to have a programmer, or could an employee learn
So what you can do, it all depends on what interface you're giving to the person who's asking the request, right? If you want to write an application that specifically says you hum a tune and I'll create a whole orchestra composition out of that tune, right? If you want to do that, you can take the OpenAI API, right, that you pay for, and every user that bounces into the OpenAI, actually, all they know is that they're using your application. They don't know as a backend you're using the OpenAI API, right? And then you're coming up with this application that says, the application that says, I've got eggs, chicken, and milk. Give me a recipe that's my kids are going to like, right? Now, you can sit back as the OpenAI, ask that query, gets the answer back. You might want to have a human look through that and say, well, this is kids' foods, right? We want to keep the habanero peppers down to a minimum or something like that. Something that ChatGPT, is a weakness, is not going to be able to do that 100%. Because obviously, if you don't offer anything, then that person's going to go with that request right to ChatGPT, right? Why would they need you? So what you're doing is you're offering that human oversight right at the end. They have API interfaces so that really the user has no idea that they're going into ChatGPT and getting the answer first.
Got it. Thank you.
Question. So
Yeah.
having been able to successfully break ChatGPT, have you ever tested, like, I have been able to break ChatGPT's limits before. And I wonder how much of its limits have been tested, documented, if you are aware of it, and what its limits are, to what stretch it is. Because you mentioned earlier that if you pop in an 8-page article in it, it would condense it down. I put in a 16-page article in it and it broke. It couldn't process the information.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it
Really?
couldn't process the information of 16 pages article. So yeah, that is I'll put it on my LinkedIn. Now that's one. Then the other thing is, so ChatGPT does understand context. You can feed it context and it understands.
Right.
However, there is context as interpreted within the machine learning and AI phase, and there is context as interpreted culturally. Like there's cultural context and cultural perspective context.
Right.
And
Right.
there are nuances in languages
Yeah.
also, where
Right.
it might be said with the same tone and the same words, but because of the
Right.
language nuance, it totally means something else. How does ChatGPT cope with such peculiarities of like cultural perspective context and language nuances?
So because it's free, I'm going to ask you to go test that yourself. I'm quite impressed with how well it's done that, right? I'm looking at it from a German perspective. I say, if I were a German, how would I answer this question back? And it not only gives me it in German, but also in cultural aspects that I think were pretty good, right? That is German right there. Again, would that be enough for me to start a conversation with someone in Germany? Probably not, right? They might say, I might say something terrible that ChatGPT would put up there, and I didn't know that. So how do they do it? I think it's one of the things they brought onto it. OpenAI says it's the massive amount of context reading that it does, right? Even right now, as we speak, it's reading in 4 to 5 terabytes a second, looking for context and nuances between the text that it gets and ingesting that to then increase its learning capability and its capability of output. Then add to that, again, the 250,000 people on Reddit that are interested enough to say, oops, this was not quite correct. You probably shouldn't say that, and split that into Reddit. That has its own account because they're OpenAI users that are able to do that. Plus, when you're in the session, something I want you to try, ask it to tell you to do something. And then if you didn't like what it did, said, I don't like that you said this. Can you reword it? And it'll try it again. It'll tell you, okay, I'll try it again then. Again, this is like a constant inability to be offended type of person next to you who is constantly going to be working for you the whole time. You have the ability to make it effective for you, right? Or you can find nothing but weaknesses and pop those weaknesses back into OpenAI and hope that OpenAI implements those, because I think they're going to try to get it as better as it can. Will it be perfect? No. In this lifetime, no. But will it get better? I think it will. I think it's gotten pretty amazingly far as it has. And don't get me wrong, you were the first one to talk about there's some previous versions, ChatGPT 3, there was ChatGPT, no, not Chat, GPT 2.5, there's GPT 1.0, right? That first got out there. All these are learning races, but the whole idea, and this is where this transformation comes in, they're able to learn all this text and ingest all this text for learning based on what it knows, right? And what it's constantly getting better and better at. Will it get better? It gets better. What I find exciting, it gets better within a session, right? When I come back and say, I was trying to do something, writing a paper on the use of Salesforce, something within Salesforce. I said, you know what? No one within Salesforce would know what you're talking about here. Explain it some more. And it says, okay, did the whole explanation of the whole article again, and took that one part and explained it a little bit more in depth going forward. So these are the kind of things, and these are the kind of inputs that you learn through prompt engineering to work with the tool to make it better and better for you. We're never going to hit perfection, right? We want efficiencies. That's all we want. So we can spend more time on the beach and more time doing some other real work, which is thinking about goals and things that we want to achieve. Yes, sir.
Quick question. So why do you think creativity in terms of creative direction versus creative writing is a weakness and also emotional response? What are your thoughts?
Well, again, as you can imagine, any kind of engine, AI engine like that, like okay, for instance, the name of the things, E3 is the AI engine that creates images, right? Graphic images. And you can say, in the art of such and such, you give me a woman who's standing on the moon with a beam tool or something like that, and it'll create this thing. So what it's doing is it's not really going out and creating anything new. It's taking what it's learned from all these existing things. So it's going to look a lot like this guy's art to be able to put that out there. Now, is that cool? It's cool because I didn't have to pay this guy and I have an art that looks just like it, right? That's the cool thing. The bad thing is it had to learn that and it didn't creatively come up with something like that. So we're not going to be able to say, listen, entertain me and create a movie for something that's there. There's always going to be something that's going to need a human interaction somewhere to say, well, that was not quite right. We need to change things around. So that's why it's going to need more of a creative direction rather than actually doing the creative process.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another question.
Yeah. One more question.
Jim, do you have any off the top of your head ways that you see this affecting the legal profession?
Oh, yes, quite a bit. There's a lot of splash you can get on the Twitter, and the legal profession is one of those. It's just every lawyer in the world is completely offended that anyone would use this to seek through legal briefs and write a legal brief by its own. But they're all using it. It's kind of very strange. There's a lot of lawyers that are using it left and right, but boy, they're complaining about the fact because they're worried. And I don't see this like they do, but I think are worried about losing control. In other words, I don't need a lawyer. I can write it as if a lawyer had written something, and then everybody thinks I actually did use a lawyer, right, to get the right legal advice to do that. And this is where it's been, the part of ingesting briefs has been really big. Oh, one last thing, let me just bring this up because this just happened, right? ChatGPT has come up with a $20 per month paid subscription capability of using ChatGPT. So if you've ever been on ChatGPT and it's been slow, it's been hard to get into, or like the previous gentleman said, you put in too many pages to tell it to degress down, that $20 takes care of that problem and it automatically does it. No, that's not fair, you would say. It's supposed to be a free tool. Yes, you're right. It's not fair, but they're making money off of this, right? Anyway, so sorry, back to that. I think there's a lot of lawyers that are using it. I think it's going to be really tough for a lawyer to say, I'm going to charge you $450 an hour because I spent 5 minutes on ChatGPT and it wrote things faster than I would have written it. But I think it's going to change things in that way. But like everything else, like medical advice, like legal advice, the question is, are we going to have a human look through it again to ensure that it's going to be the right thing? But it's legal profession is one of the biggest ones where we've seen a lot of just press, just hoopla. And again, I'm on Twitter all the time. Everybody's talking about what it's doing for lawyers, for and from lawyers.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I think the class is all questioned out. I do have one last question. How are you helping organizations with this? What is the role By the People is playing when it comes to chat?
Well, so what we do is we create as you can imagine, using Salesforce, even if you don't know what Salesforce is, it's an application where you enter in your contacts and you enter in that you called this contact yesterday, and this is what we talked about that Salesforce does. But as you can imagine, humans using or having to use this product because the company bought it, what they're missing is a knowledge management system, right? Something that really understands what they have. Yes, you can create knowledge management systems. Say, how do I create an opportunity? And it'll spit out exactly how to create an opportunity. But what if I misspelled opportunity? What if I called it a deal instead of an opportunity? What if all these things and all this question is there? So knowledge management system is one of the major things that we bring to the party for our clients, to build an ability right within Salesforce. They can ask that question. Now we'll take that question, add to the prompt all the configuration of that org when we ask ChatGPT, and then the answer comes back directly to the user. So that's where we're building knowledge management systems, which is our big thing that we have to get back from.
All right, well, thank you. Anyone else?
Yes,
Yes, sure, please.
Tim, another big question.
Yeah.
A very good friend of mine has Parkinson's disease, and there's so much out there that when you get it in immediate form, it can really affect a lot of really important things. Any ways that you see a ChatGPT query being able to almost immediately give some medical team information that they don't already have that comes from all over the world?
Well, besides just the general thing of ingesting information, right, of making it shorter, easier to conceive, taking all the reams of 20 different pictures. I mean, when you say Parkinson's, right, the background is the fact that ChatGPT has been researching Parkinson's, everything written about Parkinson's for years now, right? So they're creating all of their answers back based on all this information they have. I would not allow ChatGPT to give me any specific medical advice at all, right? On the other hand, I keep on thinking, you know, ChatGPT can be run on a phone too. Can't you come up with an app for Parkinson's people that have Parkinson's disease, and let them ask ChatGPT, you know, where is my house? I'm right here. Or who are my family members? Those kinds of questions that they could give right away and get a response back right away. So the first answer was very generic. You know, whatever's out there is going to come to the medical teams that are using it there. What again it's missing is it's only up to 2021 today, right? It's getting more. When you look at how Bing brought ChatGPT in, you know, Bing is the search engine that Microsoft created, that Chrome pretty much put down to 0%. But if you get on the new Bing, download it, start searching Parkinson's there, it'll give you not only Parkinson's, all the regular Google stuff it would give you from a search engine perspective, but it now also goes through and gives you a ChatGPT answer, right? These are the articles that we have seen a higher effectiveness of this kind of process, or these drug companies are doing things in this area, right? You'll get a whole list of stuff that goes at the same time. I think that's great for information. But in addition, I can imagine, you know, being you get a Parkinson's person to remember to just talk to their phone, and ChatGPT could be the memory for them. You know, I know one of the frustrating things of Parkinson's people that have Parkinson's disease is they know themselves they're losing their memory, right? And so if they could have something that was right there on their phone, they just press this button. That's all they do. They talk to it, give me an answer to this, and that thing uses artificial intelligence to find the answer and also gives them back the specific answer that they have spoken to them. What a great tool that would be.
What a great idea. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I've just given you $100 million idea right there.
Capstone.
Please think of me when you're flying in your private plane.
All right, Tim. Well,
all right.
That's it. Oh, innocent.
Bias.
Bios?
Yeah,
Bias.
so it's something that everyone that's probably tired of hearing me talk about. The idea of data bias and AI bias. I took a very brief second, apologies for this, after you told me to try the question. And I understand why when you asked to give an answer for a German context, it was able to give. I asked ChatGPT to give me an answer in Igbo context, and it was not able to give me. It gave me the same answer it would give anyone. And I'm Igbo. I could read if there was any context related involved in it, I would have seen it. And that made me think about biases and data biases. I'm not entirely blaming ChatGPT, partially blaming it on this founder anyway. But the fact that it's operating on data means it's susceptible to data bias, availability bias, and all of these kind of biases. So to that extent, given that there was a certain part of your lecture that was focused on the future we can build with this, given that data biases and AI biases don't seem to be going anywhere, don't seem to be going away anytime soon, how much can we bet our future on AI when it is still currently catering to the same loud narrative that every other thing caters to? And maybe let me try and say this succinctly. The same market, so to say, of the world, the same place where the entire world is focused on, is the same place the data is coming from that is fueling the different AI engines. So if someone who is not from that center seeks out help from it, it is unable to provide the solution, and solution being a context related answer, is unable to provide such solution to those people. So how much should we bet our future on such a tool that is built on what I would call the faulty infrastructure of data biased AI? Biased data rather.
It's a good question, an answer that no matter what I tell you, you're not going to believe me anyway. So what I would say, I would say there's always going to be just like there's always going to be a bias in every human interaction, by the way, every human interaction. If we get rid of computers tomorrow and burnt every data system down, we would be filled with biases, right? So every human interaction is biases tainted, right? Our best capability is to say, let's use these tools for what they actually can do, right? Computers can write. Now, there were people that would say, absolutely, my children will never touch a computer because everything is on pencil, on paper. That's the way God wanted it to be. There won't be any biases that way. But, you know, they died out with a time, right? So the question is, what is the future going to be? I think you never lose sight, right, of this danger. And you always take context into what you get from this thing. And you only use the parts that you like, and you give the other parts back. Right? You say the other parts are back. You may even get on Reddit and say, this was a biased input. This is terrible. This should not have come out of ChatGPT. Someone in OpenAI is going to hear that, and they're going to implement it and say, how in the world did that get out? Right? There's a blocker that we don't have in there. Those things are trying to improve. And why are they trying to improve? Not because they want to rule the world. They just know that if they don't improve, there are 15 to 20 current AI models being built by competing companies that will take over in no time, right? Google being one of them. Google has Lambda. There are at least 100 other in the production right now that are coming forward. So there's no one centralized place of all AI generation happening, right? That's just not happening. Even though I tell you all about the amazing things that OpenAI is being able to do, they're reading terabytes of data right now. You know what? If a Google guy was here on this conversation, they would have laughed at it. Terabytes. Terabytes is minuscule as to what we are doing at Google, right? So it's not, and really bias doesn't happen by the amount of data, right? Just because there are more people that have a certain bias doesn't mean the bias is right, right? As we all know. So the reality is we're going to have to give the human judgment to everything that comes out of these systems. We're never going to lose that. If that were the case, then we would have people start to talk about, well, why don't we just eliminate, why don't we eliminate politicians, which, you know, it might be a good thing. I'm not sure. But the reality is we will always have this discretionary bias that we need to look at, and we'll always have to question what the machine told us. Why are you telling us this way going forward? Is there the possibility that someone could control all of this information for their own malintent? I don't think so, because it's so open-ended and there are so many people creating this information, right? They're all there. If you believe in the conspiracy theory of Illuminatis and these people just control all those AI engines and then know everything they believe is going to be what's going to be in those AI engines, I don't think that's going to happen. But I do think that's what I think. Everybody loved ChatGPT. I'll tell you the truth. Google did not put out Lambda. If you remember, was it last year? They fired that one engineer that thought that Lambda was sentient. He said, oh, it's a real human being. It's talking to me, right? And they fired him because he's obviously goofy. But they didn't do it what ChatGPT had. They claimed they had the capability. They didn't, because they were worried about the human reliance on that data and that output. So maybe that's an area. Maybe it's an area to look at. Maybe that bias information is a great for human intervention into the last output of anything from AI. But I'll tell you the truth, no one is when you ride a subway in the morning, there is still a person running that subway machine, right? We all know that machines could run a subway without even, smoking dope or falling asleep or anything else. But we still have a human on there. Why? Because given all the answers, that human will still make the best decision, and at least I can hold someone accountable for it. Whereas a machine, I wouldn't be able to. And I think that we're never going to lose that. I don't think we'll ever lose that.
To that point, I think Innocent brought up something that I don't know if you can speak to. When it comes to ChatGPT, do you know anything about governance around this? Is there any governance body, or who kind of oversees it? Who's that human element?
There is no governing body that we vote for that is looking after what they output. Just like there's no governing body that looks out what Google outputs, right? You can type into Google, how can I kill my child faster? And you'll get answers. You'll get flagged, right? Clearly as a user. But so please don't test that, right? Because you'll get flagged as a user. You don't want to get into those kind of situations. And is there some kind of cooperation with law enforcement? I think there is, right? But again, there's no governing body that says this is what we should hear from computers and out of search. Just like there's not any governing body that says this is what they have. Again, ChatGPT, when they first announced, found that they had some big holes that would allow people to suddenly write me code that will be a virus that'll get past the Bank of America firewall. And it worked, actually, right? So they had to shut it down right away and had to go back and make some changes. So aside from that own self-surviving governance, there is no government body, right, that does that. I think it's too new for that anyway. As we all know, our government runs mighty slow, right? So this thing just got announced last year in November, really December. So it's going to take a while for someone to come up and say, you know what? So too many people have been listening to the medical advice of ChatGPT. They shouldn't be doing that. In that meantime, what ChatGPT will do, like they do it right now, right? Tell me a joke about women and it'll come back and say, no, that's offensive to some people. I won't do that. So it's their own self-governance to ensure that they don't need the government that I think is going to take over more strongly than someone else. Now, if we find biases, if we find leanings, I've seen some Twitter users say, some conservative Twitter users are claiming the answers are all liberal, and of course the vice versa exists of the answers that are ChatGPT. I think both of those are going into the engine, and the engine's trying to say, no, we need to steer for the middle, and any kind of extreme answers, get rid of those, and it starts learning and tries to stick to the middle, because in the middle, where's the money is, on the extremes is where you get in trouble with governing bodies and they can close you down, right?
All right.
It's interesting play for us humanoids, I'll tell you. It's a great play, great time to be out there.
Well, Tim, thank you so much.
Sure. Good luck, guys.
If there are any other questions, I'll email them to you.